Hey everyone, it's DQ Reads. You might notice my setup is a little different today. That's because I'm not featuring a book. This is mainly just because I'm going to be talking about so many books that I didn't want to also include the book I'm reading because it seems like a lot. So today's topic is books that changed my life. Now, this sounds so incredibly cliche, and it kind of is, but each and every one of these books changed my life in some way or were what I needed at the time that I read it and gave me a perspective that I really needed at the time, and because of that, you could argue changed my life. First, I'm going to start with a book that you're probably really sick of hearing about, and because of that, I'm not going to dwell on this book for too long because I've talked about it a lot recently. But that is Annie Pitt's Burger Kid. I consider this a book that changed my life because it really is one of the books that I think of that sparked my joy in reading. It's the first book I really truly remember reading, and it's a book that I fell in love with, so I credit it with starting my reading journey, which honestly changed my life. I honestly don't know where I would be without reading her books. They keep me sane, they keep me happy, and they're all overall just a really great thing for me to do every day is read. So Annie Pitts, thank you so much for that. The next book I'm going to talk about is The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. So this book definitely changed my life. I read this in around grade 10 or 11, somewhere in there, middle of high school, and this was the story I needed at the time. It just gave me the hope and the comfort of a possible love and the beautiful fairy tale of what love can be with a little bit of dose of reality in there, which I really loved. I mean, if anyone's read this book, especially when you were like around 16, especially if you were like a 16-year-old girl that was hopelessly in love with the idea of love, this probably resonated with you the same way it did me. And it was just such a lovely, sweet story to get to read at that time. I actually haven't read it in a while, so I might reread it soon, but it's a really good book. It's also a really sad book, which I think was part of what I really enjoyed at the time. It's also something a lot of my friends were reading at the time, and we bonded over it. The one friend, we had actually gone to the premiere that night, which was huge for me because I have and had really bad anxiety and couldn't, like, I had to stay on a schedule. I had to go to bed at this time, I had to wake up at this time, I had to do my homework right after I got home from school, that kind of a schedule. And to break that it was so hard for me, it was almost impossible. But this book helped me break that in the sense that this was a midnight movie premiere, I believe, and I went to it. And it was on a school night. It was a Thursday night, so I still had a day of school left. I remember getting 6 hours of sleep and not even feeling that bad and being like, oh, I can do this. Okay, cool. So this book really did change a lot for me. It helped me. I loved it so much that it helped me discover that I can break my own cycles and I can break my own patterns and be okay. As well as it gave me a hopeful love story that I needed at the time. Heck, sometimes I still need, let's be honest. I also have 2 copies of this book because I originally had the hard copy. This is the paperback. I had bought the original book, the first edition, I guess you could say, the hardcover, and at some point I lost it because we go camping and stuff on the weekends, so I had somehow lost it, had no idea where it was for a really long time, and I loved the book so much that I bought another copy, like a hard copy. I needed this one in like a physical copy. Kind of funny when I think about it because I loved it so much that I rebought it, and I have 2 copies now because we eventually found the first one. But this book really did change my life. It gave me hope for love and it broke my heart like a first love does. The next book I read around the same time in my life, and that is The Year I Turned 16 by Diane Schwemm. This book, pretty worn. It's technically 4 books in one, that's why she thick. And there's a few reasons why I would say this changed my life. I don't know what it was about this book, but I just was so absorbed in it. This book, I would say, was like my first realistic fiction. I know, I think that's a term I completely made up on my own, but whatever. It literally just follows each of these sisters' stories because there's 4 sisters, and for the year they turned 16, and I absolutely love it. And I loved it at the time. And a huge thing too was the amount of pages it was. I don't think I'd ever read anything that was like, I believe this is around 700 pages. And at the time I'd never read anything that big. So for me it was so exciting to have finished a book that was that big, but also a book that I absolutely loved. Each of the four sisters is, like any siblings, very different from one another. And at different times, whenever I read this, I've read it I think twice now, I feel like I connect with a different sister. So that's kind of cool. Even though they're all 16 at the time, like where I am in my life, I tend to connect with someone different, which is awesome. It gives you that really awesome, sweet family vibe of the coziness of a family in a book form, and just follows their lives. And it's really just almost like watching a sitcom type reality show like Modern Family or something like that, but in book form. So I really loved it. So this one isn't as life-changing as maybe some of the others were, but it was my first like really big, thick read that I loved. I think it really did help introduce me to this like genre, like I like to call it, of just realistic stories. But it's also just one that stuck with me so much, of like your 17th year is different for everyone, and this is how these four siblings navigated it in their own ways, and everyone's different and you'll find your own path kind of a thing. So it's kind of a good like coming of age story. It's comforting in that sense. The next book is kind of interesting because earlier I said that The Fault in Our Stars gave me this wonderful, hopeful view and feeling for finding true love in your life, and this next book kind of did the opposite. So this book is The Woman Who Stole My Life by Marian Keyes. This is the first book I read by her, and it honestly started like a storm of reading books by her. I love her. I love her writing. This is considered chick lit. Don't like that genre title. We're over it, whatever. But I love it because it gave me a realistic view of what life is like. I mean, she has 2 kids, but she's also divorced, and then she finds love in a sense, but all of this happens with a huge accident. So it's not the same mushy gushy story of The Fault in Our Stars where everything seems almost perfect. I say almost because we all know. We know. But in this one, it's like almost everything goes wrong, and yet happiness and love were still found in a way. I really hope that doesn't ruin the book. It's honestly such a good book that honestly, even if someone were to tell you the entire story of it, you should still read it. It's such a good book. But it really did give me hope for finding a realistic kind of love, if that makes sense. Of realistically, yeah, it's not going to be perfect all the time, but even so, like, you can still be happy and you can still have a good life no matter what. And I think that's what this book really showed me. So that changed my life, and especially because by the time I got older, like 18, 19, around there, the last thing I wanted to do was read a perfect love story. I wanted to read something that was messy. I wanted to read something that was more real, and that's what this book was. And it is. It's a great book. You should read it. This last book is kind of a weird choice for me. So this book I really credit to getting me super into poetry, and that is A Beautiful Composition of Broken by R.H. Sin. Now this book looks like it's in impeccable condition, and that's because it is. I've read it once and I'm kind of in the middle of reading it now. I'm reading 2 books right now and this is one of them. But when I read it, I take such good care of it. I don't know where this idea originally came from with this book. I don't know if I just like had a sense that I would love this book, but I love it so much now that I have to be so careful with it. But the poetry in this book is amazing. As someone who struggled with mental health basically their entire life, reading a lot of this stuff has just helped me in a way. Like, it's just nice to read something that's about being broken, but also the beauty in that, you know, in a sense. I don't know. It's definitely a weird way to put it, but it's the first poetry book that I feel like I truly, truly connected with. And because of that, it got me into poetry. I've bought poetry books since that I thought I was really gonna like, and I did not like them. And that always sucks. This is a poet that I am obsessed with. I am looking to buy literally all of his other books. I just connected so deeply. Like, I honestly, it felt like he was in my mind, taking my thoughts and feelings and putting them into poetry. So that I loved. So not only did it get me into poetry, it helped me realize that I'm not alone in a lot of this stuff, and not only am I the only one dealing with some of this negative stuff, but it can also be beautiful, and that's pretty great. Thank you so much for watching. I know this was a little of a cliche, tacky kind of video title, but I thought it would be a lot of fun to show you the books that I love and have in some way, shape, or form changed my life, whether it be getting me into reading, giving me a hopeful, beautiful idea of love, giving me a realistic idea of love, getting me into poetry, or just giving me a realistic view of life in the form of a book. As someone who loves reality TV or any sort of sitcom TV, like around families and stuff, being able to find that in a book was amazing, and I loved it. Remember to subscribe and like this video if you enjoyed it. Comment down below if you've read any of these books, or if you're interested in reading any of these books, or maybe just say hi. A lot of people are named Diane.